off air.
There we go.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Three Principles Global Community webinar. Today, we're very, very lucky to have Linda Pransky with us. And let me just say, the 3PGC, Three Principles Global Community, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. So Linda Pransky is with us. Linda went to graduate school at the University of Washington in 1975. She specialized in psychosocial nursing because she had an interest in learning how people change. She learned techniques and approaches to helping people, but nothing seemed long-lasting and beneficial. When she met Syd Banks in 1976, she saw a way for people to really change. She found her own life becoming one of comfort and simplicity. Her vision soon became one of helping people seek real and lasting change with ease. Linda is currently on the executive committee of the Three Principles Global Community, faculty of the One Thought Institute, and partner of Pransky and Associates. So Linda, thank you so much for being with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. It sounded really good. I didn't know that. No, it was really good. What I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to talk to practitioners or teachers of the three principles. This is oriented a conversation, a presentation oriented to people who want to teach and who are teaching. Because it's what happened to me along my evolutionary process of working with people that was helpful. And what I'm going to share with you is very simple. It's a really simple point, but as all simple points are, it's very profound in its repercussions. So I'm just going to go ahead and I will repeat it. I will talk about my point and repeat my point in different ways, and then ask for questions so that I really want to be of help in this regard. So when I first started teaching, sharing the principles, I would just talk about what I knew. I talk about thought, consciousness, and mind, and basically I was constantly sharing and doing very little listening. And sometimes I found that really helpful for people, and sometimes not. And I got curious about why not. So, as in so many things in life, we stumble upon what works. I stumbled upon something that really worked for me that I want to share. And that is that when I'm or anyone is in a neutral mind, a quiet mind, a neutral mind, a nice feeling, and you're engaged or listening to someone, anyone, it could be a client, a student, your husband, your friend, your child. But when you're in a nice frame of mind, a neutral mind, an easy mind, and you're just listening, things occur to you, thoughts occur to you. Now, I found that these thoughts that would occur to me from a neutral mind were very helpful and relevant to a wonderful conversation that would be very helpful to people. Now, when I first kind of switched over to being more of a listener and less of a presenter with my clients and students, things would occur to me in my mind. And what I first did was I'd evaluate whether they were good enough to say. So a thought would occur to me when I'd be listening, and I'd think, oh, that's too simple. That's not good enough. I don't know if they'll understand that. Maybe that's too direct. So the thoughts that would occur to me from a neutral mind when I was engaged in a conversation or when I was listening, the thoughts that would occur to me, I'd argue with myself while the client's talking to me. Oh no, that's not a good enough thought, or that's too this, or not enough that. Well, at some point I thought, well, why not? Why not just see? If you said what occurred to you, whether it would be helpful, take a chance. And so I started doing that. I started just, when I'd be listening to someone and something would occur to me, I'd just say it. And I'd see how it would land. And I found that most of the time, those thoughts would pull a thread and lead to a very relevant conversation around the principles. So for example, I was talking with somebody yesterday, a student, and I was listening to her, and it occurred to me, out of the blue, it occurred to me to say to her, you know, it seems to me that there are things in your life, situations in your life that you put boundaries around, and situations in your life where you have no boundaries. That's what occurred to me, so I said it. And she said, well, it stopped her. She said to me, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, boundaries are thought. You know, there's nothing more than, they're not made up of anything other than thought. You know, like people have boundaries all the time about what they can do and what they can't do, what they're good at, what they're not good at. They really have a freedom of mind in one area. Like, for example, with George and me, like I have totally freedom of mind when in cooking, right? I don't even think about cooking. It's just obvious to me what to do. I'm very creative. It's effortless, it's thoughtless, it's nothing to cook. Where George has a lot of boundaries about cooking, has a lot of thinking. Oh, I don't know if I can do it that way, or I don't know if it's going to work out, or he's got all this, he has boundaries around his I'm a cook thinking. Now, so I gave her that example. I said, here's what I mean is that people put boundaries around themselves in different ways in their life. And those boundaries are made of thought. And if you realize it's just thought that's creating the boundary, it sets you free. Now, her situation was she had a lot of boundaries around teaching the three principles, particularly to groups. Now, if she was one-on-one, she just had no thinking about it, and she would just come up with all kinds of ideas and felt very free. And she wasn't even evaluating how she was doing. And so she was getting results, getting impact one-on-one, and it was just nothing to her. She had no boundaries. She just flowed with her understanding. Now, when she would get in front of a group, she had this all this thinking, all these boundaries about what she could say, what she couldn't say, how she should present, whether it was good enough, which made her very tight in her teaching. So, and we're all that way. It's like there's not like, this is unique. Everybody has boundaries in their life, but it just has to do with in what area do you like in your life do you have too much thinking on it. Okay, so this conversation that happened with her after I'm listening from a neutral mind, and it occurs to me, oh, you have boundaries. Now, I never used that term before yesterday. I never used it. I've never used boundaries around your situations in life. Never. This is the first time ever in 35 years of teaching did I use that phrase, right? Isn't that cool? Something new? So anyway, So I said it to her, and we had a beautiful discussion that became very relevant to her about what might help her have more freedom of mind in teaching groups, because that's what she wanted to do. So really what I found over time when I started trusting what occurred to me from a neutral mind, when I started trusting what occurred to me from a neutral mind and just saying it, I found that it would lead to conversations that were relevant to people's lives in the context of the three principles, the context of the understanding. Now, sometimes it was really funny because it would be, things would occur to me, it'd be very random. Like I'd be listening and a thought would occur to me, ask them about their kid. I'm like, what? It's like, ask them about their kid. I'm like, what does that have? And I'm having this conversation. What does that have anything to do with it? And it would keep occurring to me to ask them about their kid. Out of nowhere, I'd ask them about their kid, and it would lead to an amazing conversation that was really relevant, deep, and valuable to the client and help them with their parenting. Now, it came out, where did that come from? It came out of the engagement, the connection, the listening. But it was a very random thought that in the past, I would have dismissed and not asked, because I would have felt that I was, it was inappropriate to the conversation because it completely changed the subject, right, in the middle of a conversation. Well, you can't do that. You can't ask that. See, I have boundaries around my own thinking about what I can ask and can't ask. But so random pop-up thinking that happens when you're engaged and listening is a beautiful way to deepen the conversation and make it more relevant. So I'm going to ask for some feedback to see, a little intake to see how this is setting with people. Does this make sense? Is this helpful? I'd love to hear. Any questions? People start to see that their reality, what they think of as true, is made up of thought. The boundaries expand. So you think you can do more things. Like, for example, with regard to my own thinking about what would occur to me to say, I wouldn't say because I think, oh, I can't say that, it's too direct. Well, I made that up, that it was too direct. It might be too direct or not too direct. I'd have to find out. And if it is too direct, I can just apologize and say, sorry, I was too direct with you. But they found that these pop-up thoughts, or these thoughts that would occur to me out of a neutral mind, were very relevant and really worked for the client. And very seldom did I get an objection. I have somebody wrote something down. Although I know what you mean and it's helpful, I often come to the point in a client con, oh, great. Where she comes to a point where she feels stuck. So what do? That's where I was going to go next. That's great. Okay. Because sometimes what happens is that I'll be listening. Nothing occurs to me to say. And then the client stops talking. And I'm going, okay, now what do I do? Well, what I would do became another boundary. Because like I go, oh, what do I do? Oh, I don't know. Well, you can do anything you want. It's like you could start talking, tell a story about you and the principles. You could ask them a question just to get them started again so you can keep listening. It's like, I think the problem that I had is that all of a sudden I'd feel stuck, like nothing's happening, and I'd react to feeling stuck, and I go, oh no, I'm stuck. That's just a moment in time. It's just a thought. You're just stuck for that moment, right? And there's always a new thought, right? You could see, that's the thing about I think that when you're in a neutral mind, it's like, and you stay in a neutral mind, there's always a new thought that's relevant to a conversation. Now, when you go, oh no, I'm stuck, you go out of a neutral mind, you go into the feeling of insecurity, right? But you don't have to stay there. You just realize, ooh, and then you go back into a neutral mind and get a new thought. Now, the thing that helped me relax about stuck is everybody gets stuck in the conversation from time to time. I get stuck, and it's okay. You just wait, you just start it up again. Start another conversation, tell a story, take a break. Now, here's the thing. Hi, Martin. Did that answer you? If it didn't answer you, I can say again. Well, while I'm waiting for him to type in, I'm hoping that this isn't looking hard, because I'm telling you, it made my teaching so effortless and so easy. And the dynamic that it created with the client was it made it like talking to a friend. Oh, good. He liked it. He liked the answer. It worked for him. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Any questions or anything you'd like me to talk about with regard to teaching? Very quiet out there. I'm stuck.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That's just popped up.
Yeah, go ahead. David has a question. David's my live audience.
I have a question that sometimes during a conversation with a client, I have a desire to ask them a question that I think may be inappropriate sometimes. I evaluate that. Do you ever check yourself and not ask a question?
Well, that's a really good one. I do. Like sometimes it occurs to me, like for example, I had a client where it occurred to me to say to her after I'd been listening for a while, it seems to me that your behavior is awfully bratty. Like you're kind of a spoiled brat. And I thought, no, I can't say that. It's inappropriate and judgmental. Well, I kept listening to her and it kept occurring to me. And I checked and like, do I have anything on it? Like, am I do I feel really good about her? Is my feeling non-judgmental? Or am I coming from a feeling even a little bit of being judgmental? And what happened is I checked and I went, no, I really like her. I don't really care if she's bratty. I don't care. So I thought, I'm going to try it. I'm going to say it and see what happens. Well, I was a little trepidatious about it because I thought it was inappropriate and judgmental. But I went ahead and said it anyway, and it worked out amazing. She said to me, I know everybody tells me that. I don't know what to do. Everybody tells me I'm a brat. And I don't see it. I don't understand it. What does that mean? It was the most amazing conversation. It really helped her. But see, in the past, when I first started doing this, if that had occurred to me, there's no way I would have said it. But what I did, and that was a great question, David, because I'm looking past the content of what's occurring to me. I'm looking to my feeling. I'm looking to my grounding. I'm looking, am I neutral? Do I like her? Do I have a really good feeling for her? So if I have a really good feeling for the person, I feel like I can ask them anything that occurs to me. Now, if I had a thought and I looked and I felt like there was some feeling of judgment or feeling of evaluating this person or feeling of not liking this person, I wouldn't say it.
I get that.
I absolutely wouldn't say it, because that feeling would come across with the content and they get offended. That would offend them. So it's not the content that offends people. It's the feeling behind the content. So if you're loving your client, really loving them, really got their back, really want to be in service to them, you can say whatever occurs to you.
Thank you.
But you got to, but if something occurs and you think it's inappropriate, look and see what your feeling is behind it. Yeah, let's see. How can you tell you are off or you're grounding? Okay, this is a really good question. How can you tell? How can you tell you are off your grounding or your feeling if in the moment it feels good and later you realize you were off the mark? So what I'm taking that as is you didn't recognize at the time that you had a bad feeling. But the thing is, see, usually if you have a bad feeling, the client will react to it, so it will give you immediate feedback. Now, sometimes when I'm working with a client, later on when I'm reflecting, I'll have the thought, oh, I wish I would have asked that, or I wish I would have continued that conversation. So it wasn't a matter of that I offended them. I just saw a way that it would have been a better conversation, that I saw more afterwards. And that usually happens to me, where after the conversation I go, oh man, I wish I would have said more about that or asked this. So it wasn't like I offended them from my feeling. It was just that I saw a deeper place to go, a deeper conversation, or I thought I did. But that's okay. It's all learning, and you get another shot with your client, and you can continue the conversation in another session, or even a follow-up session, or even if you even don't have a session, you can call them up on the phone and say, hey, wait a minute, here's something else I thought about that might be helpful. Now again, tell me if that answered your question or not. I have another question here. Sometimes while coaching or teaching, a silence will come up. I have learned to trust it is exactly what is needed. But when the client or student feels uncomfortable or threatened by it, how can we help them trust and listen to it? It's a really good question. Well, I know that like Syd Banks was my teacher, and sometimes the silences were really long and deep in the presence of Syd. And sometimes it was great. I felt like I was in a warm bath, and I loved it. And sometimes I would get really uncomfortable. Now, sometimes when I was really uncomfortable, Syd would take me off the hook, and I could see him taking me off the hook. He'd start talking, and as he started talking, the feeling became different and more acceptable to me, more within my comfort level. And sometimes he wouldn't. So sometimes I would just bear with it and I would get comfortable. And sometimes I'd just be uncomfortable. And sometimes I get up and walk away because of this discomfort. And I could, because it wasn't a session, it was just in a restaurant, and I'd just get up and go to the bathroom, as a way out of the discomfort. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's one way to answer that. I think that you do what occurs to you in the moment. In other words, if you found silences to be beautiful, you don't want to make a rule. See, that's the thing. You don't want a rule. Because it might occur to you to take your client off the hook. Not for your benefit, because somehow it makes sense to you in the moment. So, the principles aren't about rules or techniques, or I did it this one, silence is beautiful, so, we're going to do this, force it. You want to, it's a dance, so you might not. Like, we had a conversation with colleagues around a silent mind and insight. Because some of my colleagues and clients have had insights in the middle of a busy mind. And we teach quiet mind equals insight. And they're going, well, yeah, but not, because sometimes insight comes in the middle of a busy mind. Well, that's true too. But generally, people tend to have insights in the bus stop of a quiet mind. It seems like a higher percentage that you would, in our experience, within ourselves and with the experience of our client. So it's not like an absolute, you got to have a quiet mind to have an insight. It's helpful. So my point being, in my example or metaphor of quiet mind, busy mind, and silence, no silence, is there's no rule. You do what makes sense in the moment. So I hope that answers you, Marina. And if it doesn't, let me know. These are really good. Because see, these questions, I forget what I know about working with people. It just becomes invisible to me. So your questions help me remember what I know. Oh, good, thank you. So here's the thing. Oh, she said it was a really good answer. Thank you. I started by using that example of when I was listening and I had the pop-up thinking from my neutral mind of you put boundaries around your thinking. Well, you guys, you're kind of following that thread. It's like before I taught the principles or shared the principles with people, I did techniques and strategies, and now they look to me like just boundaries. It's like forms that you have to do, forms that you have to apply, rather than having a human-to-human connection, a human-to-human conversation where you're not attending to the boundaries of your thinking. And that's freedom. freedom of thought, freedom of mind, and it makes it a very, very beautiful experience for me to work with people like that, to teach like that, to help people in that mindset. Because it's like I'm with them in a quiet mind, and then up pops a thought, and it creates a conversation for a while. And then I listen some more, and up comes another thought, creates a conversation that's helpful. And it's so easy and effortless, and it's such a human-to-human connection and such a human-to-human conversation, as opposed to a conversation of applying techniques or strategies or rules. What else would you like to know? Well, until I get another question, I wanted to talk a little bit more about how it makes teaching so relevant to the client. And I want to go back to that conversation that I had with my client, you know, when I had the pop-up thought, you know, it seems like you're kind of bratty, you know, and didn't want to say. And I said, and we had this extremely relevant conversation about the fact that everybody in her life was giving her that feedback. Well, that was very relevant to her. And the conversation always ends up showing or helping the people see how that is created in them. That experience is created in them via thought. So anytime a conversation becomes relevant, like, you know, I'm a bratty person, that's really relevant to me, or I draw boundaries about what I can do in this area and I don't draw boundaries about what I can do in that, you always want to bring it back to how thinking creates your experience and their experience, and how you can act on that thinking such that it becomes behavior or not. So with the woman with the bratty behavior that people didn't like, I said, look, talk to me about that. Tell me what it feels like inside. Tell me what you're thinking. So she talked about, you know, it ended up being, she was kind of a bully and had to have her own way, right? That's what the thinking was that created the bratty behavior. I said, well, you know, you could have that kind of thinking about wanting to have your own way or kind of feeling like you want to force it or bully people, but you don't have to act on it. If you don't act on it, people they'll stop calling you a brat. If you want, it's up to you. But isn't it interesting as you start going backwards of, you have something occur to you, you say it, they say, oh yeah, that's relevant to me. Everyone calls me a brat. And you go, well, what's that made of? Well, it's made of these thoughts about, I want to force my way, and I want my way, and my way is really important, and I push my way on people. I said, well, that's just thought. You can act on it or not. And she saw it. It was so cool. She said, oh my goodness, that's true. That bratty behavior is just a reflection of my desire, my strong desire and my strong wants, and how I want those to happen outside in the world. I said, that's right. And you can keep doing that or not. See how simple that is? It's so simple. And she saw it as thought. She connected behavior and thought and feeling. And then she realized she could act on it or not act on it. Now, sometimes people think that it's not okay to have those thoughts, or whatever thoughts they have to act on. And I said, oh, no, you can have any thought you want. It's in your mind. Nobody can see it. It's your thought. And then it's just a misunderstanding that people think they have to act on their thinking. Oh, no, you don't. And then the other thing they think, it's not okay to have that kind of thinking. It's not, and she felt that way for a few minutes with me. Oh no, I shouldn't have that strong I shouldn't have that kind of, I don't want to bully thinking. I'm bad to have bully. I said, no, you can, just because you are not your thinking. See, I had to show her that she's not her thinking. She creates her thinking, but she's not her thinking. She's deeper than her thinking, right? She's the living examples of the spiritual nature of the principles in her that's creating content. She's the living spiritual nature of the principles creating content. She's not her content. Now, people think they're the content of their thinking because they identify with it. And instead of identifying with their true nature, which is the principle, the spiritual reality of the principles in them, in their consciousness, see? They are consciousness and mind creating a reality, a personal reality. Now, thought, consciousness, and mind in each of us that we are a part of is creating our personal reality, and we can identify with it or not. Now, if we don't identify with the content of our thinking, we don't care. If we identify with the content of our thinking, who cares what we think? Now, if we identify with it, we care. And then when we care, guess what? It becomes a knot in our mind and we struggle, right? And then we go to someone and we say, help me with my mental knot. I have this mental knot, help me. Well, the answer is just to see that that's not, you don't have to identify with the content of your thinking. Identify with the fact that you are the principle of thought. You can identify with either. There's no law. It's not a law. It's not required that you identify with the content of your thinking. It's more visible. It's harder. It's more of an intense, tangible experience within your body because, you know, thought and consciousness are tied to your sensory system, right? So you feel your thinking, but our deeper nature is more subtle in it, more feelingful and more expansive and more, you got to have an insight around it, people. I'm sorry, I'm just telling you mine. You got to have an insight around it's true. It's true. You are the principles in you, and you start to realize them through insight and identify in that direction. It's that simple. I have an OI, boy. Okay. But do you see that? See, if you understand that you don't have to identify, if you understand that you don't have to identify with the content of your thinking to the extent you understand that, okay? You have to have some understanding of that to have impact on your clients. So if you start to identify, you see that, oh, I don't have to identify with the content of my thinking. you could teach that. You can share that and it'll have impact because, you know, the teaching, the true teaching of this is the impact of your understanding around what it means to be a human being and have a reality, and understanding that it's created from the principle of thought. Your understanding is what you have to teach. And you say it in your own way. Fearlessly. In your own way. Be fearless about sharing your understanding in your own way. I got a message here. Oh. So now there's a silence. And now I'm stumped. So, my virtual person and my live person, my audience, my one-person audience, do you have anything that you want to ask about the piece I just talked about, or share?
I have something that came to mind.
Okay.
What occurs to me is that sometimes when you're working with clients, you lose that feeling, that connection, because of thought revving up.
Right.
What do you do, or how do you allow that to settle?
That's a great question. So essentially what David asks is, what do you do when you go into your head? Okay. And you get out of your neutral mind and then get out of a nice feeling. Because that's what happens. Like when you're in a neutral mind, you're kind of out of your thinking. You know, your thinking is softer and doesn't have a grip on you. And then when you go into your head, your thinking is harder and it's more, you know, you don't feel, maybe you don't feel like you have your bearings, or you've lost your feeling, you're reacting to the client. You know, you just don't have I see it as I don't have my wits about me. And I don't feel my creative process. I don't feel my pop-up thinking. I don't feel my neutral mind. So that's when I know I'm in my head. Now, here's what's important. You got to know the difference. Number one, there's a rule. That's the rule. You got to know the difference between when you're in your head and when you're in a deeper feeling or a neutral mind. Now, it's all relative, because the thing is, when you go to a deeper level of consciousness, which means more understanding, you realize you haven't had as a neutral a mind as you had thought you did, or you're not as good a listener as you thought, because it's all relative, right? But, you know, you have in your reality right now, you have what you would call a settled mind and an active mind. Now, sometimes when you're with a client, your mind revs up. It gets really busy. Now, I find when I'm in a busy mind, I don't listen too good. So when I'm not listening too good, I don't have, when I'm listening from a neutral mind, I just don't, I lose the connection. It's a way to say it. Is that when you go into your busy mind or your personal mind, you get out of neutral mind, you just lose your connection and your thinking falls apart. Your good thinking falls apart because you lose your connection with the client or with that feeling, okay? Now, when that happened to me, it first happened to me when I was teaching, I'd freak out and I'd try to get it back. Well, guess what happens when you freak out? You don't get back, you just stay there. So I had to see what to do other than freak out. Freaking out isn't working for me. I'm not going back into a neutral mind and spending the whole rest of the time scrambling, you know. And the session looks stupid, you know. To me, in my view, it looks. Anyway, so I thought, you know, I just need another way other than freaking out. Well, it occurred to me that what would happen if I didn't freak out? What would happen if I just got in my thinking, in my busy mind, and just stayed there and not freaked out? Well, guess what happens? You just go back to a neutral mind. You don't freak out. And see, that's a metaphor for everything. And if in your day-to-day life, you're in a neutral mind and something happens and then you start thinking, and you go, how do I get back into my meditative state, my neutral mind? I'm thinking. Well, it's not a how to, it's not a doing. It's just, that's what happens. And you just wait it out and it goes away. I got a whole bunch of questions. When you are speaking about teaching from your grounding, what do you mean? Is it teaching only from experiences you've already gone through in your own life, or teaching from one sense of being connected and grounded to the principles? Same thing. Same thing. Anyway, no, really. When I first started teaching, like Syd told me, teach your insights. Teach your insights, teach your understanding. So, because I asked him, what should I teach? Syd, what should I teach? I have no idea what to teach. He said, teach your insights. Well, really, I realized later what he meant. Because at first I thought it was all about the content of my insights, of course. So if my first insight was thought is mood, I'd teach about thought is mood. Well, that wasn't always relevant to people because they didn't have a problem, they didn't care. But what I realized, it was the feeling of the understanding, the feeling of the insight, right? The feeling of the insight would put me in a neutral, when I start talking about my insights, they would put me in a neutral mind and I'd start talking from a neutral mind. Now, to me, a neutral mind is, and I don't know how to say it a neutral mind is in the direction of purity of thought. A neutral mind is in your true nature. A neutral mind is in the direction of simplicity. A neutral mind is in a direction that has a deeper feeling. And a deeper mind in those kind of conversations, it creates the learning. Syd would say, there's knowledge in feeling. There's knowledge in deeper feeling. And I realized that there's the deeper knowledge in deeper feeling. Neutral mind is just the direction of deeper feeling. So whatever puts you in the direction of that, as opposed to the content. Let me tell you about my content. Let me tell you about what happened, the content of my insight. See, that's what I thought Syd was asking me. No, he was directing me towards the feeling of my insight, not the content. Okay, George, let me know if that was helpful. If a client doesn't seem to be able to unidentify from their thinking, although they grasp the concept intellectually, what can you do? Oh, there's so many things you can do. You can be hopeful. You can be reassuring. You can say, that's the first step. That could be a first step for you to understand it intellectually. Now that you've understood it intellectually, maybe we could understand it more deeply and more with a quiet mind, with a quieter mind. maybe we could have a new thought about it. But see what happens when, you know, people understand it intellectually and they don't have the kind of changes they want in their life. They don't have the kind of feeling that they are looking for. You just have to stick with them and not get discouraged. And you stay hopeful and loving and keep going. And you keep going with them until they give up, not you. Because see, it's just a thought away. Even if somebody is constantly caught up in their intellect and not having any new thought, it's just a thought away to have that happen. And the problem is, I'm telling you, the problem, we as the teachers get frustrated, hopeless, impatient. They've been in their intellect too long. If we don't get hopeless, if we stay hopeful, it's not a problem. Honestly, we have to stay hopeful. When we talk about deepening my understanding as a teacher with another 3 principal teacher, when we talk about deepening my understanding as a, we talk about deepening my understanding as a teacher. You mean like when, like if you were a student and you had like a mentor and you wanted to get more understanding, so you went to somebody that you felt had more understanding? So like, could talk about, see, here's the thing. Here's what's really cool. Okay, here's a pop-up thought I had, which I'm thinking, don't say that, Linda. That sounds stupid. Okay, but so I'm gonna say it anyway. Right? Pop-up thought after reading that question. And I'm going to talk about it a number of ways, but this is the first way because it was a pop-up thought I had. Mind is my best teacher. What does that mean? Mind is my best teacher. Well, I got to a point, you know, there was a long time when I was going to Syd, and I was mainly Syd. Or I go to George, you know, what do you think? Help me with this. I want to learn more. You know, always going out, and it was very useful. No, don't get me wrong. It was really useful. But I was always going outside myself. Help me, help me, help me. And it was really helpful. Then I realized that, and this is just my vernacular, because I'm pointing to something, so don't get caught up in the content, okay? I realized that mind had my back, and mind was my best counsel. And mind was where I would get new thinking. This is just my content, my vernacular. I realized that people are set up for new thought. They're constantly set up for new thought. Constantly. My experience, mind is constantly wanting to give me new thinking, answer my questions, deepen my understanding, right? Mind, the intelligence of all things that we're connected to, that I'm connected to, that you're connected to. When I get out of what I already know, out of my circle of perpetual trying to figure out an answer, and I just kind of put that aside and go, you know, I'd love to have an answer to this. I get a new thought 9 times out of 10. So mine becomes my best teacher, my mentor, my best counselor. Now, it's not like I don't go to people, and like I'll go to, you know, George or Barb or Aaron or Mara, and I'll say, what do you think? What do you think? I'm looking for some answers here. Let's just have a conversation. It's not like I don't do that sometimes, but I find that I become my own best counsel, my own best friend. Isn't that cool? You can do that. You can become your own, but it requires your willingness to not know. And it's so hard for people to not know. They hate it. They don't want to not know. They don't want to be in the feeling of not knowing. They go, oh no, I hate this. Well, that's the door to getting an answer. You gotta not know to know. You gotta not know to know. I don't know. And then you get an answer. So, the thing is, here's the thing. You know how I said there's no rules, no techniques, no ways? You know what the way is? Your way. What occurs to you. Like it might occur to you, I want this person as my teacher. And then you go, oh, no. Linda says that mind has her back, so mind should have my back. So I should get, my teacher should be mine, like Linda. Well, does that work for you right now? It doesn't work for you. If it doesn't, then, and it keeps occurring to you, I would just love to go to Salt Spring and be with Elsie. And it just keeps occurring to you. I'd just love to do this program I saw that's offered. Or I would, I really want to go to the conference. It totally makes sense to me to go to the conference. That's your way right now. What makes sense to you in the moment from a neutral mind is your way. It's your way in your life, and it's your way with your clients and your students. You see that? Now, it may not be your way tomorrow. You may get a new way between now and tomorrow. But don't look outside yourself and go, well, that person does it this way, and Linda says that, and George says it, Elsie said. Look inside to a deeper thought that's reoccurring. Gee, I really would love to learn from this person. Really love to learn from this person. Or I don't really want to learn. I just want to listen to Syd's DVDs or CDs or read his books. That's all I want to do is read his books. That's all I want to do, read his book. Oh, that's beautiful. So George says, great answer. Thank you. My way was asking you. Maybe next time I'll ask me. Perfect. That's great. That's exact. Oh, you heard me. Yay. Oh, we ran out of time. We've gone over. Sorry. So I guess this is it. I hope this was helpful to people.
It was extremely helpful. I think I speak for everybody when I say that. I know I speak for me.
Oh, good. Now, how was it? Tell me how it was helpful. I do this with clients, okay, or students.
Yeah.
I want to know.
Okay.
Because this feeds my pop-up thinking. This is an example. How is it helpful?
For me, what was really helpful is reinforcing that trust in what's coming through me. Because for me, that's one of the biggest hindrances is trusting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for that, because that's what I wanted. The one thing I wanted to get across to people, one thing. There was just one point. Trust yourself. Trust your way. Now, the thing is, if you screw up and you get in your head and you offend somebody, you get out of your neutral mind, apologize and learn from it, right? That's all you have to do. Apologize and learn from it. That's simple. Okay, so I'm going to stop, and you had something that you wanted to say.
Yes, and I just want to say, Martin said it was helpful to hear about hope as well. That was nice.
It's an easy thing to lose when you work with someone for a long time and they don't seem to be getting anything. It's an easy thing to lose. So just bear in mind.
Yeah.
Keep your hope.
Thank you so much, Linda. This was great. Is there anything that you would like to say to wrap up?
I did. The one point.
Perfect.
The one point, the one thing I wanted to get across with all that verbiage was trust yourself.
Great.
Trust what occurs to you. Trust your thinking from a neutral mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know the difference, you'll find out because the client will give you feedback, right? Because they'll get offended if you're not coming from a nice feeling and you say something directive.
Yeah.
Or you just say something off the top of your head and you don't have a nice feeling, you will offend them and you'll feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really fabulous. And what I did want to bring up at the end, now that we're closing, is that the next 3PGC conference, Linda had mentioned that a little while ago. If your way is to go to the conference, then go. That was my way. I found out about the principles in 2013, about a week before the conference, and I went to the conference, and it was a fabulous experience. So the next one is coming up. It's in Westlake Village, which is in the Los Angeles area. The dates are October 27th through Sunday, October 30th. And registration is open now. The website is 3principlesconference.org, 3 spelled out THREE, principlesconference.org. Do you want to say anything about the conference?
Yes, I think from my thinking, you all should come to it. Because it's such a gathering of teachers and community, and it's such a sharing, and it's just such a wonderful experience. So if you can come, it's worth it. I don't know that anybody has ever said it wasn't worth it. Yeah.
It was worth it for me. So I agree with that. Yeah. And I want to also tell you all that the next webinar is with Amy Johnson on March 10th and Christine Heath on March 22nd. So hope to virtually see you all there.
All right.
Thanks, Linda. Bye.